got a object that we've begun to do some basic modeling and sculpting of, beginning to knock this into the general shape of the head of a hammer. The back, we split it in order to make the claw of the hammer. In order to finish that, we're going to need to extrude. We could just right click, go into faces, select one side and then select the other side, and then, extrude and try and get them even. But it's a lot easier to do it all together the same, so it winds up even. There are, like everything else in Maya, there are a lot of ways to do absolutely everything. You can extrude from either over here in the modeling toolkit. If you don't see your modeling toolkit, make sure that is selected. You could extrude from right here over in the polygons shelf. If you don't see this tool, make sure polygons is selected. Make sure you're in the modeling menu set. Or you could go over here under edit mesh and extrude, and this is the way I'm going to choose, and the reason I'm going to do it that way is so I can hold down shift, select both faces, edit mesh, extrude, click on the little box to change it, and let's give this 3 divisions. Apply. Now when I pull this out, I have 3 divisions. You'll notice that it's snapped. That's because I still have snapping to grid on. I don't want that anymore. So I'm going to turn off snapping to grid, zoom out, and pull this out to a nice, I don't know, I guess a claw of a hammer is about that long. I have another problem. My faces, if I shrink them, they're acting like one face, and that's not what I want, because I hit Control Z to undo that. If a claw hammer has a split in the middle, and that's how you pull out nails. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under the attribute editor over here on the side. If you don't see the attribute editor, make sure that your show hide, you can click on this to show hide the attribute editor. So over here under the attribute editor, every time you do something, it adds more attributes to this shape. The last extrude that I did right here was I had keep faces together on. After the fact, you can change certain things about your extrude. So I'm going to click on this to turn that off, and now when I go and Control Z, when I go and I shrink these, that wasn't the right. Hold on, I'm going back. My mistake, I went from the wrong end. The extrude faces I wanted was all the way over on the left. You'll notice over here on the left and on the right, I got it backwards. The latest ones are stacked on this end. So if I extrude it again, there would be another extrude over here, and then the poly extrude face 3 would be another tab over here. So I turn this one off, and now when I shrink this one face in, you'll notice that it's a little easier to tell in this view. You'll notice that we now have two forks, 2 faces. Okay? I'm going to move this up a little bit, and I'm going to rotate it around. I'm going to grab it in the side view, because the center axis of rotation in the side view only moves it along that one axis. If I tried to do it in this view, if I wasn't perfectly spot on, which is just about impossible to get in this kind of view, this is what's called a perspective view. These are orthographic views. You'll notice that it's starting to skew. Like if you look at it in this view, it's starting to skew. So hit Control Z, and in my side view, where there's only one way it can rotate, I pull that one out. Okay? Now when I roll around, it's starting to look like the claw of a hammer. You cannot roll a orthographic views. These three are orthographic views. You do not roll them. This is a perspective view. You can roll the perspective view. I'm holding down Alt and left mouse button again to roll around. Okay, that's not bad. It's not doing quite the curve I want to, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to go into vertexes. I'm using the selection tool and I'm going to use the W. I'm thinking this one's probably right in line with that one, maybe a little bit lower. And this one needs to be a little bit higher, but not quite that high. Then this one needs to be right about where it is. This one, a little bit higher. This one, a little bit higher. Starting to look a little bit more like the claw of a hammer. It's still boxy, but we're going to fix that in a minute. All right. Now I go and I right click and I go back. There's that. That's really annoying that it does that. I right click and I go into faces and I'm going to make the face of the hammer. But now you see I've got two faces right here. So I want to, when I do this extrude, I want to make sure that keep faces together is on. So I'm going to move it out just a little bit. I'm going to leave the 3 on because I think it's actually working for this one. Actually, you know, I'm going to turn it off because I didn't intend to. If I didn't intend to, we're not doing it. Edit mesh, extrude. Let's turn it back into divisions 1. Okay, I click apply. Notice that this window didn't disappear. It still did it. Okay, if you click apply over and over and over again, it'll do it over and over and over again, and you'll be adding faces, and that'll start to mess it with it when you start to smooth your object. Okay, so I move it out a little bit. I hit R to resize. I'm going to click this middle one to shrink it down on all 3 axes. Then I'm going to extrude it again. Move it out a little more. Going to extrude it again. Move it out a little more. This time I'm going to hit R to resize it to make it bigger again, because the striking part is larger again. Then I'm going to extrude. There are also hotkeys for extrude. You could hit, I forget, it's Control E. Mesh. Yep, Control E is another way to do it. It is also under the modeling toolkit under Extrude. Any one of those will work. In Maya, there are a million different ways to do absolutely everything. All right, so let's back off and look at what we got. We got something sort of hammerish, hammer-esque. Thor would not wield it, but you know, it's the kind of thing that you might. It's looking a little big on this end, a little small on that end. Let me go ahead and fix that. Go under vertexes and select all of these. Hit the R for resize button. R for resize, that's odd. Sometimes Maya glitches. I'm going to make this longer. Hit W to move it out a bit. That came out a little wonkier than I wanted it to. Just going to select these while I've still only got a few faces and fix it like this. Got to get the general shape down before. What we're going to do in a little bit is smooth it, and after it's smooth, it's a lot harder to fix the overall shape of the object. All right, not bad. You know what? I'm thinking the top-down view. The head's too big. Hit R. A little bit smaller. All right, that's pretty hammerish. Mildly hammered. All right, next thing we're going to do is same idea for the handle. You could create, like, your instincts would say, oh, wait a minute, I've got other, polygon objects. I could create polygon primitives. I could create a cylinder, And you know what? A handle is more like a cylinder than it is like a square, right? And you know, resize this and R, you know, and then move it around on this other axis. And it starts to seem like that would be a better hammer handle. The reason that's not a good idea is because A, you couldn't insert edge loops, which is just a good thing to do when you want to manipulate the geometry. And also, if you shoved this up inside of this head to hide the tip, you're using polygons. I mean, it's not. Render engines are getting better, but you're hiding those polygon faces instead of really using them. And the best way to do it is to just have it all as one object and change the texture of the faces rather than create a new object with polygons that you don't need and geometry that won't rig properly. That'll make sense later. Okay, let's make the hammer or the handle real quick. Select the faces, Shift. If this is getting in the way, you can always shrink it down. Hold down Shift. That's odd. There we go. And let's extrude. Make this bigger. R for resize. Shrink it down just a little bit. Trying to gauge exactly how much smaller I want it. Not that much smaller. Just a little bit smaller. W to move it down just a hair. Do it again. Down just a little bit. I think I'm going to make it move out a little more, and then hit R for resize on all four axes. Start to fix that. Extrude again. Down, this would be where your palm meets it, so it gets a little bit smaller, I'm thinking. I'm just making this up. There are ways to use actual photographs as a reference, but we'll get into that later. Then we extrude down. R for resize, make it a little bit bigger, not that much bigger. A little bit bigger. And extrude again. And R for resize. And move it up a little bit. As hammers go back into vertexes to adjust the general shape again. Alright, starting to look like a boxy hammer. I'm going to add a divot on the top. Go back into faces. Select those two, again holding down Shift, selecting both of those. Extrude, R for resize. Shrink them in. Extrude it again. W to move it down. Extrude it again. R for resize. Extrude it again. Now let's move it up. This is that part of the hammer that's made out of wood that comes up through the center. And it looks really boxy. We've just got one tool left, and then we'll smooth it out, and it'll be so hammered. You'll be enamored with the hammer. All right. And that's going to be in the next video.